right, bless y'all, bless y'all, bless y'all. This Pastor Muir here. Coming to you this morning with a short video. And as you can see the title of this video, I put God is using Pastor Dowell to help First Church. Okay, so um, I was just reading this morning, and what's really sticking out to me, all of the more so, is this term church. And when I think about it, I've been thinking about uh, this whole debate between Pastor Dowell and Geno Jennings. Now, obviously, as we can clearly see, and as we stated from the beginning, we don't think this debate was ever going to happen. And I know that there's a lot of feelings and emotions that go into it from both sides. And what do I mean by feelings and emotions? Because you can clearly see all of these videos that are just flooding, especially YouTube, flooding the internet about this debate. And as you see the title of this video here, I was really pondering on the word or the title, even the title of the assembly there, First Church. And what's really sticking out to me is what the first actual church did, because I know that in Christianity, it is commonly mistaken that there's two separate uh, people. There's two separate groups of the elect, or the very elect, as the Bible states. I know in the mindset and the thought of Christianity that is the case. Where they say, well, you got, Israel, or what they'll term the Jewish people. And then you have the church. And I got news for you, okay? Anybody who really truly even begins to study this Bible will understand that is false. That is a false narrative. The book clearly states that all Israel shall be saved, okay? When somebody is either converted or by adoption comes back to Israel, okay, they are considered Israel. You're no longer your nation. You're no longer the people you've came from. You're no longer any of those things. And it's very, very important to see that. And the reason why, again, I titled this that God is using Pastor Dowell to help First Church. I know y'all may not like his delivery. I know y'all may not like the way it comes off. But I encourage you to go read the book. Go read the prophets. Go read how these men spoke. If you see somebody that is drowning, you're not going to speak to them softly and speak to them in a way saying, hey, you might want to grab this life raft. No, you're going to speak to them with an urgency. You're going to speak to them with a vigor. You're going to speak to them in a way that is going to wake them up to say, you need to grab this life raft or you're going to drown. I'm pretty sure that y'all over there at First Church can understand that because you see how Geno Jennings speaks. Now, with that being said, you may not consider yourself Israel. You may not call yourself that. But for anybody who says they believe what is written in this book, and they have, here it is, believed on the Israelite Messiah, You know, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ. Anybody who has believed on him, you have to understand something. That this man, Jesus the Christ, is an Israelite. This man, Jesus the Christ, is not coming back for two separate people. He's not coming back for the Christian church as well as Jewish people. It doesn't work that way. He's coming back for his people, Israel. And you can see it all over this book. I was reading in the law this morning, okay? And I'm going to just read a couple things. I was reading the law this morning. I was reading in, here it is, Exodus. Okay? If you go to Exodus 12, all right, I'm going to read it here. Listen to what it said here. Exodus 12, and I'm going to go to verse 48. All right? Look what he says. And when the stranger shall sojourn with thee and will keep the Passover of Yahweh, let all his males be circumcised, and then let him come near and keep it. And he shall be as one that is born in the land, for no uncircumcised person shall eat thereof. So he's going to keep it, and he's going to be as one that is born in the land. A stranger is. Okay? So again, there's still no separate two people. He said he's going to be as one that is born in the land. Okay? Read verse 49. He says, one law. Because again, that is a thought in Christian doctrine. Is that, okay, well, because we are not considered Jewish or Israel, that we have a different set of laws. We have a different set of instructions. You know, we can just choose to say we believe in Jesus, but we don't have to do what he instructs. You know, he is the word, right? He is the literal word of Yahweh Elohim, or as most people would commonly say, of God. He is the word of God. Look what he says. One law, this verse 49, shall be to him that is homeborn and unto the stranger that sojourn among you. One law. To him that is homeborn and the stranger that does what? Sojourns among you. The person that is amongst you. Okay? He gives one instruction. And I know there's many fathers out there. Many fathers are not going to turn around and give an instruction to one child, and then on the other hand, in the same house, give the different instruction to the other child and expect the same result. It doesn't work that way. And we really just got to think. And I know in this generation, in this time, it is hard for people to think, but I'm not going to get off course. I'm going to get back. Leviticus 24, okay? And I know I'm going to get to the New Testament too, because a lot of times, or what they call the New Testament, because people say, oh, y'all just so caught up in the law, and the Old Testament. We're going to get to it. I'm going to show you, okay? I'm going to go to Leviticus chapter 24, and I'm going to read verse 22. Look what it says. It says, you shall have one manner of law, as well for the stranger as for one of your own country, for I am the Lord your God. Again, one law. Okay? For the stranger and of one in your own country. Again, this is a stranger that does what? Sojourns among you. This is one who has picked this up, this book, and says, I am going to adhere to it. Because I got news for you. The whole book is about his word. It's about the word that was given in the beginning that Israel refused to obey. And that same word, as you can read in John 1, became flesh and dwelt among us. And guess what he did? he went around doing the same thing that Israel would not do. And see, this is why, again, I'm titling this video, God is using Pastor Dowell to help First Church. Because if you call yourself the Quahal, okay? If you call yourself the Ecclesia, the congregation or the assembly, and not only that, you say you're the first. If you're the first, it would charge you to go back and be just like the first assembly should have been, which is to follow and the instructions. This is why the book tells you to study to show yourself approved. Notice what is happening in this whole thing about this debate. You continue to hear us go over. You continue to see us go over. Let me do this real quick. You continue to see us go over passage after passage after passage after passage of scripture. And the reason why we're doing that, if you can't clearly see, is it is a call to obedience. We're telling you, you need to come back. Pastor Dowell has been telling y'all and ripping First Church and the members and telling y'all need to come back to what the word says. Obviously, it's been in the topic of divorce and remarriage and polygyny. But if you haven't noticed the overhanging thing, the overhanging topic in all of it is come back to the instructions. Come back and obey. You can read it all over the book. You can go all the way to Revelation, and you'll see all the way in Revelation, he tells you to turn back to your first love. You'll say that Jesus the Christ is your first love. Well, if that is the case, turn back to what he instructed you to do, because he said he does nothing of himself. He didn't come and bring anything new. He told you what you are to do. He said he does nothing of himself. He does only what he sees the Father do. And the Father gave his instructions on Mount Sinai. Let's keep going. I'm going to go to Numbers 9. Okay? And I'm going to start at verse 14. He said, and if a stranger shall sojourn among you and will keep the Passover unto Yahweh, according to the ordinance of the Passover and according to the manner thereof, so shall he do. Ye shall have one ordinance, both for the stranger and for him that was born in the land. So again, you have a sojourner, you have one who comes among Israel, and they're to have one ordinance, one instruction. So again, for all of you out here who identify yourselves as Christians, you go to First Church, or you identify yourself as holiness. Okay? He says, be ye holy as I am holy. Consider where the people were at this time. They were in the wilderness. And do you remember why they got there? He told Moshe to tell Pharaoh to let my people go. Why? So they could go into the wilderness and do what? Have a feast unto me. He didn't say to go to church on Sunday. He didn't say to go stand up and eat everything abominable as he instructed you not to do. He didn't say to go celebrate all of these wicked, defiled holidays. And I'm not saying y'all do that as far as the holidays or holidays. But what I am saying to you is he called them to be obedient. And guess what? The Israelite Messiah, Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ, did the same thing. He kept the Passover. So as the apostle told us that we are to walk as he walked, what do you think you're supposed to be doing? Do you think you're supposed to be keeping his holy days? Starting with the Sabbath, as we read the Messiah went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day as it was his custom. I know a lot of people like to use Paul. But here's one thing about Paul. Number one, you don't understand Paul because you don't understand what's written in the first 5 books of the Bible. And Peter warned you, telling you that Paul's epistles are hard to be understood. And the unlearned, what will they do? They will twist the scriptures unto their own destruction. Because I got news for you. I encourage you. I charge you. I dare you. Whatever the word I can use that will cause you to go look at what Paul did. Start there. You know, we got a term out here that says, a saying that says, I can show you better than I can tell you. Go read and look what Paul actually did. The man wasn't crazy. The man wasn't a lunatic. But I got news for you. He kept the feast days. He kept the Sabbath. He taught so many different times. You can read all through the book of Acts where they would begging him to stay so they could learn again on the next Sabbath. Go look at what he did. And then I encourage you to turn around and do the same, because Abraham was a friend of Yah. And if you read in Genesis chapter 26, he says it right here in verse 5, because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. He's a friend of Yah, a friend of God. Don't you want to be identified as that? And if you say you are you really? Because this told you why he was a friend. Because he obeyed his voice. He kept his charge, his commandments, his statutes, and his laws. And guess what? This was before Moses. This is why, again, I titled this video. Because we've all had fathers. We've all had mothers. We've had people that have brought us up, grandparents. When they were trying to get your attention, sometimes they yelled and they hollered at you. Sometimes they said things that was going to poke you and say, wait a minute, why do you have to speak to me? You're going to think about yourself, why do you have to speak to me in that manner? Just to get your attention. And if Pastor Dowell is so wrong in what he is trying to tell y'all to do, to come back to obedience, prove him wrong. Because remember, this debate wasn't issued by him. This debate was answered by him in the subject of divorce and remarriage. And then upon further look, you start to look at more and more doctrines that Pastor Geno Jennings is teaching. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. And that's why he continues to go in and say, hey, look what the book says. Opposed to charismatic preachers. Look at what the book actually says. You see? But I'm going to go on. Because I told you I was caught up on this word, church. The kahal in Hebrew, or the ecclesia in the Greek. It wasn't a congregation of Christians. It wasn't the congregation of anybody else. It is the congregation of Israel. Okay? So let's go to the New Testament. Let's go to Acts. Let's look at what Stephen said here. I know what your translation will say. What is that? Acts 7. Let me look here. I think it's 38. Yeah, okay. This is Acts chapter 7 and verse 38, okay? Matter of fact, I'm going to start from verse 33. He said, then said Yahweh to him, put off thy shoes. Just remember, he's talking to Moses. From thy feet, for the place where thou standest is holy ground. I have seen the affliction of my people, which is in Egypt, and I have heard their groaning, and am come down to deliver them. And now come, I will send thee into Egypt. This Moses, whom they refused, saying, Who made thee a ruler and a judge? The same did God send to be ruler and a deliverer by the hand of the angel which appeared to him in the bush. So we understand that God sent an angel to appear to Moses to tell him, to show him that he was going to be a deliverer for his people, Israel. Okay? Now understand this. Look what he says. He said the angel, but we can get into that later. But look, he says, he brought them out after that he had showed wonders and signs in the land of Egypt. If you want to know something about the Father, just like when you see John the Baptist declare the kingdom of Yah is at hand, he always confirms his word with power. Always. So now you got to ask yourself a question first, church. Is that taking place? Because I can tell you right now, it happens all over this ministry that you see right here. All over it. People getting healed all over the place. Demons being cast out all over the place. Now, I'm not talking about just jerking because you see somebody jerking and doing this and dancing and all of this and these movements. No, I'm talking about actual healings. I'm talking about doctor verifications. People coming back. A young man just told me at Pentecost. He said, man, you laid hands on me at Passover of my back. And I want to tell you, I want to show you my back and how the Father has healed me. I'm not talking about these facades. Okay? He said that these signs shall follow them that believe. That's what the Messiah said. Now look what he says here. Verse 36, he says, he brought them out after he showed signs and wonders in the land of Egypt and in the Red Sea and in the wilderness 40 years. So he brought them out into the wilderness. But let's see who he brought out. First church. This is that Moses which said unto the children of Israel, a prophet shall stand. The prophet shall the Lord your God rise up unto you of your brethren, like unto me, him shall ye hear. Okay, so understand something. As we hear it here, they didn't want to listen to Moses. They actually said, who made you a ruler? Do you notice what Moses kept telling them to do, though? He kept telling them, return, obey these commandments, obey this law, the actual word of God. Obey it, obey it, obey it, obey it. Begin to do it. Not just say it, but begin to do it. He kept saying that. And then Messiah, as we know, came. After all the prophets had the same message. Turn back. Guess what the Messiah did? Saved his people, Israel. He said he wasn't sent except unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel from their sin. And guess what he did? Walked around keeping the commandments and then told you he didn't come to abolish any law. Not one jot or tittle from the law or the prophets. What he told you is he came to fulfill. Now, I don't understand this rhetoric that people think fulfill means finished. It's over. We don't have to do it anymore. And it's the dumbest thing when you really, truly think about it. I've used this example many times. If I'm driving a vehicle and I come up to a red light, the law tells me to stop. I stop. When it turns green, I drive. And then as I begin to drive again, guess what? The next red light, I stop again. I don't run through the red light because I fulfilled it the first time. I stop again. I continue to adhere to the law. And if you can do that for man's law, which that law I pointed out will protect your life or the life of somebody else, why you can't do it for the Father? And continue to do what he says. First church. Look what he says here. Verse 38. This is he that was in the church in the wilderness with the angel which spoke to him in the Mount Sinai and with our fathers who received the lively oracles to give unto us. Received lively utterance of God. The lively oracles. They received his statutes. But who did? It was the church. Would we consider Israel the first church? Or the first ecclesia? Or the first kahal? And if you walk around and you are a part of assembly and you title yourself the first church, wouldn't it be wise to go back and do what the first church was charged to do? When you read the book of Acts, the first church, do you have all things common? Have you sold all your possessions and had all things common? Because that's what the first church was doing. You know, since we were talking about tithes and offerings last time, when he didn't answer the question, Pastor Geno Jennings, guess what Israel did? They were together in the wilderness. He charged them again. He said, this is he that was in the church in the wilderness. Why were they in the wilderness? Why was this church in the wilderness? That was to keep the feast. Are you keeping the feast? Starting with the 7-day Sabbath, which is a feast. Go read Leviticus 23. At the end of the day, the Father does not change. And what y'all really need to understand is that the Father is using Pastor Charles Dowell to call you to obedience, to actually do what this word says. I know you got all these people that's on the internet. You got this disrespectful clown show that weighs probably 120 pounds, soaking wet, dude named Tony Harvin, okay, who sits around and puts pictures and images of people's wives and with slaves and thoughts and all type of mess on there. You know, you got this other one, C-Rock. You got all these people just pumping the algorithms with all of this rhetoric. But ask yourself a true question. Have they picked up these scriptures one time? Have they picked this up one time and had anything to refute off of what we're saying? Because anybody with a brain, you can clearly see we ain't just out here talking. We are bringing to you chapter and verse over and over and over and over and over again. And here's the even more powerful thing. We can sit behind these computers and tell you chapter and verse all day. But here's the truth. If you were to really even do a further investigation and peer into our lives even all the more so, you would see that we live this. We did videos last week when we were actually building houses. We plant vineyards. We have gardens. We take wives. We live set apart. You know, we actually live like we're in the wilderness. Most of us are. We ain't in these cities. Israel was called from Egypt, the greatest superpower of that day, out into the wilderness. We live in America, the greatest superpower of this day, and we live in the wilderness. After the death, burial, and resurrection of the Messiah, guess where they went? Into the wilderness. They sold all their possessions, and they lived amongst each other. So are you still stuck in these cities? Who's really obeying what this word says? I hope this can reach the ears of somebody, and I hope it encourages you to go back and read everything that I put before you this morning. As I said, I was just caught up on this word church, man. And what the church, the Qahal or the ecclesia, actually did. Hey. I hope this is here to edify somebody. May y'all be praised and wicked men scattered in the name of Jesus. Bless y'all.